Love You to Death, Stan Kraychik Mystery. Second in the series. Writer Grant Michaels, publisher St. Martin's Inn, New York, 1992. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 5. Who's Zooming Whom? I took a cab to the woman's detention unit, which was on Asylum Street, an unlikely name in the deep South End, where the squalor of the industrial age, Boston, persist. Sexism reigns even in prisons. I'd once been to the Charles Street jail where the male criminals are kept. That place is cold and brutal. In contrast, the WDU, while not exactly homey, was more like a dreary government office building than a prison, and unlike the man's jail with its damp, acrid, metallic smell, the walls of the WDU retained the distinctive scent of long hair after it received its 200 daily brushstrokes. Getting into the visiting room was no trouble at all. Lorette was still only a suspect, not a convicted felon, so she had complete visiting rights. The long rectangular visitors' room had 6 stalls arranged in a row, most like those in an old-fashioned language laboratory. Each stall was separated from the prisoner's side by a panel of plate glass roughly the size of an LP record jacket, about an inch thick. Lorette's beautiful face appeared in the window, and without the softening effect of makeup, her strong features seemed defiant. Her first remark was, "How is my boy?" Her voice came over a small speaker mounted in the wooden counter under the window. I yelled back, "He's fine!" With her index finger to her lips, she gave me the sign to shh. Then she pointed to the chipped black button near the speaker, and I heard her voice over the speaker again. "Push the button, Venos." I pressed it and heard a slight pop over the speaker. "Better?" I asked. Lorette nodded. I wondered why she knew how to use the intercom so well. Who else had visited her? Or had she been in here before? I realized unhappily that I was already doubting my own friend. "Where is she now?" she asked. "At the shop with Nicole." "Why didn't you bring him here?" "I didn't think he should see you like this." "Like what, Venos? My boy will learn how the world turns. You bring him here next time. Let him see what they do to his pa, miss." Reluctantly, I nodded. The social niceties over, I launched directly into why I'd come to see her. "Lorette, that man who died last night, was he the same one who used to see you at the salon?" Lorette sat up defensively. "Who?" "Trek DeLorean?" "Who?" she said again, and already I sensed that she was plain stupid. "I recall you had a boyfriend." "So what? Is that against the law?" "Was Trek DeLorean Tobias's father?" "That what my boy say?" I nodded. Lorette's eyes narrowed and hardened. "For a baby man, he have a wild mind and a big yapper." He mentioned a guy named Trek, which was the dead man's name, so I figured it was the same person. He said Trek was at your place a lot. Lorette studied my face warily. "What else Tobias tell you?" I felt my face flush. "That Trek liked to walk around naked a lot." Lorette burst into raucous laughter, which she kept up long after the joke had passed. Whatever it was, finally she said, "You a grown man believing what a 4-year-old brat telling you?" "You deny it?" "That boy's pa be back in Jamaica where I left him." "But I should know my own boy's pa, shouldn't I?" "Yes, Lorette," I admitted sheepishly, "but Tobias has obviously got white blood in him, and Trek was white." Lorette grinned. "Mr. Van Nose, there be white men plenty in Jamaica." She was on the verge of another laughing fit, but this time the joke was on me, who jumped to a stupid racist conclusion based on circumstantial evidence. "But, Lorette, the chocolate you gave that guy was loaded with cyanide." Her face stiffened instantly. "Venos, I give him nothing. He took it." "But I saw you decorating them." "Sure, I was, but I didn't give him that, and I sure didn't put poison inside." "Then how did the poison get into it?" "I don't know." Someone put it inside there before I took the flour off. Then Trek ate it when I leave the kitchen. Wait a minute, I said. You took the decoration off the truffle. Sure I did. That candy was all covered with fingerprints. I couldn't put that on a silver plate, so I fixed a new one with the same flour. So the truffle that killed Trek was supposed to go to someone else? One of the 3 special guests? Sure you're right. So who was it? Lorette looked at me with obvious blankness. I pressed her. Well, she maintained her stony stare. Larry, I entreated as quietly as I could over the microphone. Who was supposed to get that truffle? Finally, after long moments of silence, her face softened into sadness, and she said, It was for Mr. Kingsley. This was the key, then. Someone had wanted to kill Prentice Kingsley. Lorette repeated herself. That truffle, the almond one, was for Mr. Kingsley. But it looked bad, so I changed it for another one. That's what I was fixing in the kitchen when you came in, when I took the other ones out to the party. Trek ate that one, but it was all an accident. No, Lorette, it wasn't an accident. It was a mistake. The deadly truffle just went to the wrong person. But I don't do it, Venos. I had to believe her, didn't I? What else could I do? Lorette's natural dark beauty gave her that advantage, the one that made you want to believe her. It was the same with good-looking men. Beautiful people can lie to you point blank, but their face is such a marvel of surface and shadow that you tend to believe anything that comes from its lips, even the lovely lies. Lorette, who's in charge of making those truffles? That's old Misery herself, Miss Mary Finney. She's the boss lady of the factory. I thought a moment and remembered hearing the name. Wasn't that the older woman you were arguing with last night in the kitchen? She hardened her face again. Before you ask any more, Mr. District Attorney, I will explain. Mary Finney is with Gladys Gardner for 100 years or more. Lorette cackled lightly at her own joke. She was not too happy with the new store. But why pick on you? Because Mr. Kingsley and Miss Lisa and that young Danny, they all hire me, and Mary Finney want that job herself. To manage La Jardine? Mm-hmm, replied Lorette with a Buddha-like grin and a curly-Q inflection in her voice that mocked the likelihood of the henna-haired crone managing an upscale boutique. Lorette, since you were in charge of presenting the special truffles, you must know what flavors the other 2 guests of honor had, right? Lorette nodded with a sly grin. Even the police didn't ask me about that, Benos. Young Danny had orange. Grand Marnier, it's called. And Miss Lisa. Lorette smiled at the intentional misnomer. Miss Lisa have plain, just like herself. He he. What else did you tell the police? Only what they asked me. But did they believe one word? No. They think I'm just trying to put the blame on someone else. Now, why would I do that? You tell me. Seeing no graceful way to continue on that tact, I changed the subject. Nicole's lawyer friend said he'll represent you at the inquest. Lorette grinned broadly. His eyes got a big surprise to see a beautiful black woman waiting for him here last night. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, Lorette, I said, but I was thinking that horse's ass was more appropriate for Charles. I started getting my coat on. I'm going now, Lorette. I've got some new leads, thanks to you. And I'm thanking you, Venos, for taking care of Tobias. I'll make it up to you when I'm out of here. I promise that. Don't worry about it. I got up and left the visiting room. On my way out, I went over the new facts Lorette had laid out. Branco must have known them too. I wondered if he was following up on any of it, especially the fact that Prentice Kingsley was the actual intended victim, or was the mighty Branco content to let the case roll along to a hearing with the evidence as he saw it? Just a mixed-race domestic argument that had culminated in the ultimate violence. I phoned Nicole from the WDU to tell her I'd be back to pick up Tobias after my next stop. the Gladys Gardner Chocolate Company, where I wanted to talk with Prentice Kingsley and warn him that someone might be trying to hunt him down. Wouldn't hurt to meet Mary Finney there either, since she'd presumably been in charge of making the candy. When Nicole found out my destination, though, she said, "I think a field trip to a chocolate factory would be a delightful way for a young boy to spend some time with his Uncle Stanley." "But, Nicky, I've got to talk to people. How am I supposed to do that with a kid in tow?" "You should have thought of that earlier." "What if something happens to him? It will be on your conscience for not babysitting him." "What's going to happen to him, Stanley?" "I don't think they make bulletproof vests small enough for him." "Your arguments are futile. I'm running a salon, not a daycare center." "I can just see the little tyke wounded by a stray bullet." "Stanley, stop the cops and robbers nonsense. You get back here and take the boy with you." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She hung up. Back outside, the bright morning sun was trying to warm up the snow-frozen ground, but to no avail. February in Boston means cold, period. I headed back to the shop, troubled by my growing doubt over Laurette's innocence. Perhaps the story about Prentice Kingsley was true, but the truffles I'd taken from her apartment still rankled me. Had she brought them home just to practice loading them with poison? But then, whom would she be trying to kill, and why? A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.